Conference. As Liverpool's voice in the shadow cabinet, I'm proud to welcome you to our fantastic city, a city transformed under a Labour government, a city determined not to be dragged back despite the best efforts of the Tories and the Liberal Democrats. And I pay tribute to the inspirational leadership of Joe Anderson as he steers our city through tough times. And in May, Liverpool told the Liberal Democrats what we thought of their decision to sell out this city, to prop up a Tory government. We defeated them in seat after seat. And I want to welcome to his first conference our energetic new councillor for Wavertree, elected in May at just 18 years of age, Jake Morrison. Jake. It's great to see Liverpool leading the way on transport. Outside London, the only city to take control of its rail network, keeping fares down, and about to introduce our version of London's Oyster card, the Walrus, the first travel card in the country that buys you more than just your ticket. And wouldn't it be good if London was once again led by someone who understands why transport matters, someone who doesn't let bus and tube fares spiral but brings them under control? So let's ensure the next Mayor of London is a Labour Mayor, Ken Livingstone. Devolving funding and decision-making over transport is making a real difference in our cities. But in government, we didn't go far enough. That's why our policy review has been looking at how we can devolve more transport responsibilities, local rail services, investment in our roads. These are decisions that should be made locally by integrated transport authorities, not just in our major cities, but right across the country. And just like in London, powers to deliver bus services in the way that best suits each community. Quality contracts were a good start, but the incentives to use them just aren't there, and the risks too great. In too many places, no accountability, no way for local communities to set priorities, profits, not passengers, too often driving decisions. So, our policy review is looking at the right way to reverse bus deregulation. But it's not right to say that this government doesn't believe in devolution when it suits them, like devolving to local authorities the cuts to local transport, £500 million this year alone, setting back the progress we made on road safety, on getting people cycling and walking, cutting bus services, reducing opportunities for young people, increasing social isolation. Just think back to the election. Do you remember the TV debate? Remember David Cameron's outrage when we warned that free bus passes for older people were under threat? Yet he slashed funding for the scheme, so bus routes are being cut. And now, up and down the country, pensioners want to know, what use is a free bus pass without a bus? And you know what's even more despicable? Ending reduced fares on coaches for older people and disabled people, causing misery and isolation this Christmas. And who's been in the driving seat of these cuts? Liberal Democrat Transport Minister Norman Baker, fast becoming a modern-day Beeching for the buses. The same Norman Baker who promised to cut rail fares at the election, but's hiking them by 8%, not for 1 year, but for 3 years in a row. Eye-watering ticket prices. Not my words, but Transport Secretary Philip Hammond's. And has there ever been a Secretary of State so out of touch with the day-to-day lives of millions of people up and down the country? And the Lib Dems just let him get away with it. And what's Norman Baker got in return? The centrepiece of his conference speech last week? The Road Signs Review. I think we know which road signs are going to survive his review. No left turn. You turn here. And no doubt we'll be seeing lots more give way signs. Giving way on rail fares. Giving way on buses. Norman Baker, a give-way minister in a give-way party. That's the Liberal Democrats in this Tory-led government. The transport companies have a social responsibility too, and since privatisation we've not seen enough of it. We've stood by the bus companies as the government's cut their subsidies. Now I want them to stand by Britain's next generation. So today, I call on them to work together in return for the support they receive, put back into society some of their profits, and in time for the next academic year, deliver a concessionary fares scheme for young people aged 16 to 18 in educational training. And if they don't, the government should insist that they do. And we need greater responsibility from the train operating companies too. So when rail franchises come up, here's what the government should do. Not reward companies that walk away from franchises to avoid payments to government. Not reward companies who stealthily widen peak time to charge the highest prices for more of the day. Not reward companies who average out the fare cap so commuters pay way over the odds for a ticket, even though Tory ministers tell them it's okay. That's the irresponsibility at the top that Ed Miliband has pledged that a future Labour government will tackle. No more something for nothing in our privatised industries. And let's be honest, our rail system is not fit for purpose and needs radical change. We were too timid about this in government. It cannot be right that the rail industry costs the taxpayer £4 billion a year, yet a few at the top can walk away with hundreds of millions of pounds in profit every year. The Tory answer: close ticket offices, sack frontline staff. But there is an alternative. Isn't it time to tackle the fragmentation of our rail industry that's the disastrous legacy of the Tory privatisation? Because it's madness that the taxpayer has to pay compensation to train companies while the track's repaired, even though it's essential to run their services. It's madness that the taxpayer then pays the same company again so their bus division can provide a rail replacement service. I think if your train's replaced by a bus, your ticket should cost less. But under our fragmented industry, that won't happen, because the train companies will just pass on the cost to the taxpayer. The country wants us to find a better way to deliver rail services in Britain. That's what we heard loud and clear in our policy review. They manage it in other parts of the EU, and we can do it here. So over the coming months, we'll be looking at the right way to bring order back to the chaos in our railways. And let's have a new deal for British train manufacturing too. It's time to nail a lie about the government's decision to build the new Thames-Link trains abroad. If the government thought the tender was wrong, they had every right to rip it up and start again. The truth, as Philip Hammond has admitted, it just didn't occur to him, because this is a government that cannot think beyond the bottom line. The local workforce at Bombardier and the trades unions should be proud of the way they're fighting, not just for their jobs, but for the future of train manufacturing in this country. And we should be proud of the fantastic job that our local Labour MPs, Margaret Beckett and Chris Williamson, are doing. We stand with you, and we must keep fighting for those jobs. And let's make sure that never again do we stack the odds so badly against Britain. I say to Philip Hammond, there's no faith that your department will give British manufacturing a fair chance, so hand over responsibility for ordering the new Crossrail trains to Transport for London, which, thanks to Labour, has a track record of buying British. And while we're at it, let's show our commitment to rail devolution by letting them manage more of London's suburban rail services, providing another opportunity for British train manufacturing. And let's set out a long-term strategy for investing in our rail infrastructure. No more talk of classic rail, but a network transformed with a programme to complete electrification and introduce a new generation of high-speed intercity trains. And yes, let's also tackle the capacity problem between north and south, and in the only credible way it can be done. A new high-speed rail line, not just from London to Birmingham, but onto Manchester, Sheffield and Leeds, cutting journey times across the UK, benefiting Glasgow and Edinburgh, and yes, bringing Liverpool under 100 minutes from London. But the Tory-led government is wrong to only take powers to build the first part of the new line. So I call on them to ensure the whole route right through to the north is included in the forthcoming legislation. And let's make it a line that's affordable for the many, not the few. Because when Philip Hammond says that if you work in a factory in Manchester, you'll never use it, but not to worry because you'll benefit when your company director does, I'm sorry, but that's a Tory vision for high-speed rail, not a Labour vision. Philip Hammond may think it's a rich man's toy, but we don't, and a future Labour government never will. So, conference, we've had a tough journey ahead of us. We've only just set out. So celebrating what we achieved, recognising what we got wrong, we've started to chart a new course for transport, putting communities in charge here in Liverpool and across Britain, tackling irresponsibility at the top, backing British manufacturing, jobs and growth, affordability our #1 priority. That's Labour's new direction for transport.